here, 7-6 left. Freiburg goes for the kill, he's going to pick it up. If just exists survives, he's going to win the round, there's no time. Oh my God, Freiburg, are you kidding me? Win the round because of it. Freiburg is going to win.
Hello everyone and welcome to another edition of By the Numbers with me, your host, Richard Lewis. And with me as always every week it is the world's premier CSGO analyst and thinker of thoughts. It's Duncan Thorin Shields. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm all right. I think we've got some interesting topics on the docket, as they say in town hall meetings in America, which apparently are a big thing, Rich.
Yeah. I mean, there certainly are lots of things to talk about this week. It's certainly going to be a bit more of a sort of political and, dare I say, business-orientated show than it would be usually. So just before we get into that, obviously, I guess it's worth mentioning that we will be doing the major, and we're getting geared up for that. So how are you feeling ahead of a major? Are you obviously hyped? Any stress, any extra pressure, any extra level of preparation you've been putting yourself through?
I don't think there's ever any stress. I mean, the only stress I ever have at events is more the stuff that people never see on camera. It's like, what kind of sleeping arrangements will you have? When do you arrive at the event? How tired will you be? What's the schedule like? It's mainly just minor concerns like that. Like, I actually think for this particular event, it's one of the ones I've been the most excited to go and work at in my whole career, I think, because the actual lineup of the major looks awesome. I mean, when those groups were released, the first thing I thought wasn't like the usual thing, which is look for which the group of death is, complain about that. That's usually what people do. Actually, my first thought was like, wow, these groups are by far the most competitive I've ever seen, probably in any esports game ever, actually. Like, the bottom... Like the floor of the event, as it were, is so high. Like, even in theory, the worst teams there legitimately can get out of the groups. It's crazy. So I think there's going to be an amazing tournament. Then at the top end of the scene, you've got all these teams who can win. It's really not like there's one obvious favorite. There's a bunch of teams can win this event. So I think actually this is exactly the sort of event that I wanted to be involved in terms of doing on-camera stuff, because I want this to be like the best tournament we've ever had in CSGO, and hopefully with my own unique skill set, I can play a part in helping to translate the story to the newer viewers or people who are hardcore viewers and they want to know like the real story of what's going on. Hopefully it can be good in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of looking forward to it as well. I think we've got pretty much the premier talent roster in terms of all the best talent that's available. Moses got freed up and wasn't sort of held back from being able to do it, which I think is going to be a big boon, a big addition. And of course, it's
at least
all
for this year, Rich. At least for 2015, it's all right.
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll have to wait and see how the
foreshadowing there.
Well. Yeah, quite possibly.
We'll have to see what modern times brings for us, Rich. What modern times will bring. May you live in modern times.
But we've got obviously all the best casting duos as well there, and Scoots is getting a do it, and Red Eye's back doing the stage hosting. So I was a little bit sort of perplexed when someone that I've got a lot of respect for, Joe Miller, said that the lineup was just decent, because I'd sort of struggle to pick and choose and make it better. But that's just me. But yeah, this is the first event I've actually felt a little bit of pressure for myself, in terms of, I want it to go well, and I think this is going to be the best major yet. I think it's going to have lots of twists and turns. I think it's one of the first majors where legitimately there are maybe 4 or 5 teams that can take the title. And I think it's going to be an epic event, provided we all do our job, of course.
When you say that, though, when you say that you feel pressure, don't you think that's also another great thing about this tournament? Like, I mean, there's been events in the past, Rich, where we've done them, and there were maybe smaller ones where some of the talent there are ones that are inexperienced, or the ones that have issues, and sometimes you look at those events and you think, this is going to be stressful because I'm going to have to carry the desk sometimes, or I'm going to have to carry this. Some of the casters might think, I have to carry the cast I'm doing, this guy's not got experience. So in theory, that's not the case here. Like, actually, what's going to be great is there's so much talent. I think it'll actually be one of the easiest events we do in a sense, because there's so many great people to bounce opinions off, to get their insight on, to have them on the desk with us to do casting. I think in that sense, everyone will kind of buoy each other up.
But then you see, what if we go too far, Duncan? What if our banter levels are too much for a major? Have you thought about this? Have you thought about how it'll be? That right now,
can't go too far, mate.
I don't know. I thought maybe we did a little bit in London.
Here's the thing, Rich. Here's the thing. My plan, I'll let everyone in on the inside workings, okay? Here's my approach, Rich. I keep telling these events, like, listen, I know what's acceptable. I know what good taste is. I know kind of like what you guys are going for with your event. I'll keep it within those bounds. Here's the real plan, Rich, okay? We're going to get our performance when we do these shows to be so entertaining and so good as well in terms of analysis that ultimately we can say almost anything we want. That will be the luxury that we're allowing ourselves. We're going to be like the superstar lead singer of the band. Before we were just the bassist, okay, we were needed to a degree, but they can replace us. Now we're going to become the frontman, Rich, to the extent that when we fuck the groupies, we can also demand anal because we're the fucking frontman. Like, get out. There's someone else will take it if not. So
demand that they
over.
give us anal. Or
if you want to, I know you're a very progressive person now, Rich. So yeah, maybe equality is all that's needed. You
got to take it where you can. Beggars can't be choosers.
Literally, yeah.
It's exactly. But no, so I'm looking forward to it. I am looking forward to the event. But like I said, this is the one that I think, I got a little bit of anxiousness for the first time. Usually I rock up and I do these events and I don't really care about it, but this one I think does mean a lot.
Well, just think of this, Rich.
Perfect and nail
just
it.
Think of what some of those ESL majors were like. You've got nothing to worry about. Listen, it's a good size. You're going to put in all your effort and use your experience.
The usual dogs will be waiting to bark if we...
what did you actually think of that comment by Joe?
Honestly, I mean, I guess I'm a little bit disappointed he would say that. I mean, he's entitled to his opinion. You know me, I would never hold back from volunteering an opinion.
Sure.
But
that's the thing, though. He didn't really give an opinion. He just said, like, in a vague way that, like, it wasn't quite, like, one or two tweaks, I think is what he said. But here's the part I don't get about that is, I'm not being at all facetious when I say this. I genuinely can't think which tweaks he's thinking of. Like, I can't think who he would think in his mind has been left off that should definitely be on there instead of someone else. Like, can you even hypothesize who it might be? Because the problem, since he didn't say himself, it's kind of not really that great. It's kind of a redundant comment,
I don't know if he was going to bat for his boy Deman, because obviously Lee's had a lot of shit since he came over to CSGO, and some of it undeserved, some of it deserved, and maybe he was trying to, you have to say that. I mean, look, I guess it's like me with ESL, like ESL is saying, hey, do you want to host? And I'm like, no, because if Thorin isn't there, it's not a premier event. Now, I mean, now that we're in this together now, like, I'm gonna have to say that no matter what, even if my view changed at some point, or even if there was a new analyst that came on the block and he did everything you did, but better, faster, like he's the T1000.
Okay.
Of CSGO analysis.
Has MTG been building some sort of Manchurian candidate, Rich, to replace me? Is that what you're trying to imply here?
Well, anything's possible. So here's the thing. Like, obviously, if they announce this all-star lineup and the T1000 Thorin, the Thorin 1000 was in the ESL lineup and everyone was going, woo, this is amazing, I'd probably come out on Twitter and go, yeah, but Duncan isn't there. And... it'd be really transparent why I was doing it, but I would do it because, bros before hoes, right? So, I don't know.
In this case, ESL being the hose.
Yeah, very much so. So I think, I think maybe it's that, because look, let's be honest here. There's obviously been a lot gone on for Lee, and I think everybody's cognizant of some of it now. The way ESL have brought him in, they've effectively lured him away from Riot Games, where he was on a very good standard of living. Was considered their premier. He was the voice of League of Legends, and then he comes into CS:GO. And I think ESL have maybe it's Lee, I don't know, but they've positioned him front and center in CSGO and saying he's our guy. Even Joe Miller, who would be for me, the real jewel in the crown in terms of CSGO casting that ESL could bring. They not pushed, I think Joe wants to do it as well, into this sort of management position. And Lee was meant to be the guy that was sort of flying the flag for ESL Counterstrike. Now, unfortunately, I think he had a shaky start, and it just didn't get any better for whatever reason. Some people say he didn't put the application in. I also know that the community can sometimes be very unforgiving and just not like you. That's it. Once you're tarnished, that's it. You know, you can't really win them over again. So maybe it's 50-50. Maybe it's a balance of both. But ultimately, it hasn't worked out. I think he knows that. I think ESL know that. I think, you know, everyone's super aware of it. So I think Joe's probably just giving his friend, you know, tangentially maybe a little pep talk. Like, yeah, if Deman was in there, it'd be good. I don't know. I mean, maybe it's not even that.
Problem is that it's kind of bullshit. Like, here's the big problem. There was a thread about this the other day when on the League of Legends subreddit, people were talking about Deman doing the BBC. No, actually, it wasn't the BBC one. It was when he did an interview with Travis about whether he'd come back to League of Legends.
Yeah.
And one of the things people discussed in that was, like, all these League of Legends people, understandably, were like, what's wrong? Like, is he not popular as a CSGO caster? Because to them, that's an alien concept. Because, like you said, he's one of the voices of League of Legends. He was actually a pretty good play-by-play caster in that game. He was absolutely an iconic name, you know. And so to them, it's kind of an alien concept that people in another game might not even like him, or might not want to hear him, or might want to hear other people. And someone made a great comment, which I thought really just summed up Demon's time in CSGO. They just said, it's not that he's a bad caster, it's just that he's sort of like the 6th or 7th best caster, and that the people ahead of him are really good casters for CSGO and are more liked and basically have almost every quality going for them, you know, like just as good technically, really great history in the game, you know. Basically that's the problem. It's not that he's bad, and I've never said he's a bad caster, by the way. I mean, I liked him in League of Legends. It's just in CSGO, like they're saying there, why would you choose him over the Anders or something like that? And then that's the other problem as a side point, is that if I was kind of trying to be BM and I was trying to do my sort of hit 'em up style rap response, Rich, I'd literally say, like, there's a great line that Suge Knight, the leader of Death Row label, actually once said at an awards show, where he said, like, you know, if you artists out there don't want to have it so that, like, the producers all up in your video, come to Death Row. So that would kind of be my point as to why this major will be better than the ESL major. Because the idea is, when they hire Anders and Semler to do DreamHack Cluj Poker, you will see Anders and Semler, and very likely, I'm assuming, do the final. You won't have Anders and then someone else, this, let's call him in this analogy, the producer, insert himself into the cast and just do the cast for whatever reason. Either he thinks it's better or his own ego, whatever it might be. You'll just get a better show. And so that's another one of the problems that, let's face it, is one of the reasons underlying some of the just the negative vibes toward Deman in that sense. I still think if he really wanted to, he could make a go of it in CSGO. I think it'd still work out. If he went, here's the problem. If you look at these interviews where he's saying, hinting that maybe I would consider going back to, or maybe I enjoyed it at Riot and I'm doing other games as well, that right there is the death knell for me. Because what you have to be saying if you're going to stay in CSGO is, I'm 100% committed to CSGO. Even if people don't like me now, I'm going to work so that one day I'm good enough that they'll have to, you know, they won't be able to ignore me. I'll have to be considered one of the best casters, and it won't matter anything that's happened. Unfortunately, that's not really like the vibe I'm getting from what he's saying here. So I think that's a shame, because I think if he really did apply himself, I think he definitely could become one of the best. Just at the moment, I don't know that he hasn't tried hard enough. I just don't think he's been around long enough yet.
Well, I mean, in regards to trying, what I would say is, if you know you don't have to try to get the premium spots, why would you?
That is a problem,
you know, Yeah, we know this has gone on. We know that whether it's an ESL thing or a D-man thing, we know on numerous occasions it's been like, yeah, he's going to be in the final. We know ESL have deliberately broke up the Anderson-Semler partnership because they want to try and attach their own talent to their popularity, which is thankfully in the ESL, ESEA Pro League Online, that stopped happening now, and I certainly hope that's at Anders and Semler's behest, because they're a partnership that works, and they should only be broken up for the reasons of breaks, you know, and sort of stretching out, you know, a long broadcast. But yeah, it's a very strange one. I gotta say, I think chances are we probably, like, Lee will go back to Riot. I mean, I can imagine that would be incredibly seductive for anybody, right? Like, you can come back to the game where everybody loves you, everyone says you're the best, probably is on a fat contract, right? And it's a game that comes naturally to you. You don't have to work. The community will forgive you anyway for any ring rust, so to speak, when you come back to the game. So I think that's probably the future that would pan out. I guess. Interestingly enough, while we're on this topic, and this isn't how I planned to start the show at all, but I think it's interesting. I saw Anders was out at well, he was out talking to Blizzard about Overwatch.
Okay.
So I wonder if he's going to expand his repertoire soon, and what that would mean if he did.
I mean, I think it would be a mistake personally, for similar reasons to the Deman example, actually. You are literally the voice of the game. You're one of the best at doing the game, certainly. You've got all these good qualities. Okay, it's okay maybe if you just dip your toe in that pool. But the problem is, if you try to like play both at the same time, I think something's going to give. So actually, I mean, the problem with the whole Deman thing is, I actually think it was a mistake, just as a business move, to leave Riot and to go leave League of Legends. That's a game that, rightfully so, he was one of the premier casters. Because not only was he good, but he'd been there from day one as well. So he'd earned it as well, you know. And this whole notion that, I mean, apparently, we obviously can't say much about this, but apparently there was maybe other reasons why. I believe it was even said at some point publicly that he didn't want to move to Berlin to do where they'd moved the studios. So there was obviously some other external reasons as to why he didn't continue with League of Legends. But looking back now, I think that was a mistake. Like, I think he should have stuck with it. I think he would have been brilliant doing the World Championship this time. I also think, unfortunately, some of the people who replaced him couldn't be as good. They weren't in a position where they'd naturally earned the spot themselves. They just got the spot by default. That's one of the things. When you talk about earning it in this sense, it's not like some Protestant work ethic that you have to kill yourself, working yourself to death, and then somehow you're allowed to do it, you know? I mean, literally, you have to get good enough. Like think of some of the people in CSGO. Two of the people I've seen improve the most in the last year and a half is Sadakist and DDK. And the reason they improved is because they were nobodies. Sadakist was literally a guy isolated doing the odd ESEA LAN and would forever be thought of as just another NA caster. You know, what do they know about European League, CSGO? Nothing. They only know about North American teams, you know, which is at the time the least relevant region. So the problem is, someone like him, in theory, should never have been able to break into the European scene. Yet now, everyone in Europe loves him because he came over, he took the opportunities he got, which were smaller opportunities, worked himself really hard at them, and now he actually has, I always say this, for a North American caster, he has really good understanding of the European teams now, actually. He's very much come away from the natural bias that you get of just being within the North American bubble. Likewise, DDK, because he's working with FACEIT, because he started off just doing small cups, he was never going to be doing a major. He's doing one now because he's worked so much that, yeah, he's never going to beat Anderson Semler brand, but he's got his own unique brand. And if it's the option of we can have both, well, now people are loving the fact that they've hired both. So I think these people can all make it if they're good enough. And you know people like Deman have talent. Like I was making this point the other day. When you talk about casters, something I used to do myself before I'd ever done casting, which was very naive, is because I was an expert about CS 1.6, I used to do what a lot of people do on Twitter now in League of Legends. I used to judge people only on their knowledge of the game. And if their knowledge of the game wasn't good, I'd be like, well, that guy's trash. He doesn't know anything. Because I knew a lot more than him. What I didn't realize when I came to do casting was how much technical skill is involved in casting. At the end of the day, 99% of people who are experts about the game would be terrible on the mic. They'd be dog shit. They would never get any of their thoughts across. They wouldn't even be able to follow the cast. They'd be talking over people all the time. So what I came to realize was it's like there's two skills at once going on here. There's the technical skill and then there's the game knowledge skill. And then in the middle somewhere, hopefully you have a happy balance between whether or not you're a color caster or a play-by-play. People like Deman, and by the way, some of the League of Legends casts I don't particularly like I'm not a big fan of Freak, okay? But Freak, for a color commentator, has very good technical skill. He's really smooth. He's always on point. He's actually quite charismatic if you like his personality. He gets his jokes out. He doesn't fumble his words. He follows the train of what people are talking about. His technical skills are extremely good. Now then, I don't like some of his knowledge stuff, but you can see the point here is that just because you have the raw knowledge doesn't mean your technical skills. So someone like Deman does have a massive advantage, even over some of the CSGO casters, in terms of technical skill, because how much work he's put into it, how much he's developed his style. His problem is, I think, unfortunately, because League of Legends now came so easy to him, and he had in the past done lots of games, he naively conflated the two and thought, okay, well, I used to do all these games in the past and everyone thought it was great. Yeah, that was 8 years ago, mate. The game was extremely limited back then and the technical skill required there was very low. So yeah, just having technical skill in the past used to be all you needed. You could be a DJ, you could be a tosspot, know nothing about the game you're talking about, but you sounded so smooth, you had the great accent, everyone was loving it. Now, you've got to know the basics, because now, one of the key things I think in CSGO, I hate this line that people say, which goes, well, of course, a play-by-play caster doesn't have to know anything about the game. They do have to know. Here's the thing they have to know. They have to know what they don't know so that they can set up the color guy to to do a really interesting point. They can't be asking the collar guy some moronic question, because then he has to make them look like an idiot if he ignores it. So I think actually there's a bit of give and take there, but I think in general, that whole topic is kind of a worrying one, because going forwards, if someone like Deman's going to stay in CSGO, I think they have to just sort of take that mentality of like, I've got to pay my dues again, you know. And if they do, they'll make it, I'm pretty sure.
And back to Anders, you know, how would you feel about him dividing his time between a brand new class-based FPS and Counterstrike? You know, let's say that happened. Is that viable? Because, you know, I'm like you. I want to see Anders and Semler do finals, and that's no disrespect to anyone else, because I think I think we've now actually got three elite level duos, all with their own unique style, and that is obviously Anders and Semler, DDK and James, and Henry and Sadekist. I think you pair any of those up. You take any of those pairings and you put them in a game, you're going to have entertainment, a high level of knowledge. They understand the ebb and flow, and it's going to be a very entertaining broadcast and a very good cast. And I think we've got an embarrassment of riches in CSGO casting right now. I think anybody wanting to come and try and get involved, it's going to be a real. You're going to have to bring your A game beyond. You're going to have to work it every day, like DDK did. People forget, you know, when he first started with Face It, he was casting Quake and was only doing Counter-Strike on the side, like sort of as a favor to them. You know, like Quake was the game he knew. Now he's sort of a bona fide elite tier commentator in Counter-Strike through hard work. Now, if Anders were to sort of divide his time between two games, which I think would be great for him individually, I'd love to see him expand his repertoire and become a big caster. But are there any concerns there that it might start to erode some of the things that we take for granted in our wonderful scene?
The big problem I see just purely for Anders is the notion that you've already seen Anders, as soon as CSGO got big, was when he had his kid, and immediately he was saying, like, I'm going to have to take some events off now. Then he fucked his whole leg up, so he was like, no, it's going to be even more difficult. So for me, the big issue is it already feels like with the current circuit, Anders can't do it all anyway. So if he adds in another game, I'm worried that he'll just be spreading himself way too thin. I mean, obviously, for someone like Anders, it sounds very alluring to spread yourself thin. But and there's a lot of you to go around, so yeah, I get it, Anders. I get it, mate. So, but for real, I think the problem there is I think it would hurt CS:GO to a degree if he did, and also I'm just a little bit concerned about it as a notion, because I don't think it's that necessary. Like, no one knows yet if Overwatch will be big. Definitely no one knows if CS is going away, even in the next 5 years. If anything, of all the big games, it's the one that has the most potential legs under it for me, where it can last many years. And someone like him, since he's the premier guy, will always have a good living, even if it halved in size, you know. So it's just a bit concerning to me as to why he'd even be kind of messing with the formula, you know. It's like there's a saying in hockey, when someone is on a streak of like goal scoring or whatever, making a point every game, they always just say, don't fuck with the streak. That's all they say. And they don't give any instructions. What they're saying is, whatever you're doing that's working now, don't fuck with it whatsoever. Just, you know, wear the same socks every game, come to work the same way, give the same high five to the first player each time, and just keep it going. Because the idea is you probably don't entirely know what's making it work for you now. So you don't want to mess with any part of the formula in case you fuck up even the good thing you got going for you now. I mean, do you think this ever means Anders would actually leave CSGO?
I don't think he'd ever leave it, but you know, put it this way, I know one of the things Blizzard have been most disappointed about with their new esports titles thus far, Heroes of the Storm, etc., is sort of the caliber of the casters that they've had in the game. They obviously, I mean, this has been reflected, for example, in the Heroes of the Storm broadcast, where they didn't take any of the active casters in the scene. Which would be people like, you know, Kaldor, Kalaris. They brought, you know, Tastosis out to sort of do it for them. And I imagine for Overwatch's launch, they're going to want premier level FPS casters. I mean, there's something maybe D-Man might want to think about, frankly. But Anders, yeah, I think he's good enough and smart enough and hardworking enough to be able to sort of divide his time in a sensible way and do good things. But I agree with you. I think right now in his career it'd be unnecessary. It would just be a luxury in terms of, getting an extra string to your bow, especially with the opportunity to do TV work in 2016. I wouldn't want to be diluting, my potency by doing other games or whatever. I'd want to be, right, hi, Turner League, how do I get on TBS? And he can have the same speech that I've had from Americans, lose 30 pounds, and in my case, get a hair transplant. Because they're just up front like that.
You know what I love, by the way? First of all, by the way, Anders is a guy who doesn't care if you make little jabs at him, right, or whatever. Like, he's fine with it. But did you see this guy, I think his name's like Knocker or something, on Twitter, who's doing all these caricatures of all the players?
The caricatures. He did one of us, yeah.
Did you see the one he did of Anders and Semler, though? The Anders that he did there is brilliant, mate, because he actually captured that, like, cheeky grin that Anders does, which only works, by the way, because he's, like, a slightly chubby guy who has those really rosy cheeks. It's like that, like... What's great is, though, I've always said this, Rich, part of me is almost disappointed at what a down-to-earth, like, lovely guy Anders is, because part of me wants to see him just go evil. I want to see him go diva. I want to see that smile be evil, not be friendly and warm, and be sort of like, I'm fucking you up now. That would warm my heart, mate.
It's got to happen at some point, hasn't it? He's got to got to
realize
snap
eventually. I want him to do the World Championship next year, Rich.
No, it's like, look, there's a bit where on Charlie Brooker's screen wipe, which he talked about what it's like when you first get into the TV business, and it's him on the studio, and this girl comes up to him and goes, "Oh, hi, I'm Michelle. I'm going to be your runner." And he goes, "Oh, don't fuss. And she goes, "Oh, can I get you a cup of coffee?" And he goes, "Oh, yeah, that'd be really nice. That'd be really nice, actually." He gets coffee, and she goes, "Oh, and this is your chair." And he's like, "Oh, thanks." And he just sits there and has his coffee. And then it's like day 2. And he like comes in and he's like, "Oh, hi, Michelle. Yeah, I'm a bit flustered today. Is it possible to get a cup of coffee?" And she goes, "Yep, no problem." And he goes, "Oh, that's great. And then by like day 5 or whatever, he's like, "Where's my fucking coffee, you fucking bitch?" And like she sat in the chair, and he's like, "Get out my fucking chair. If I see you in the chair again, you'll never work in here. In fact, fuck off. You're banned from London. You're banned from TV." And it's just that the more and more you're exposed to the indulgence of it all, right? The more of a monster you become. And I'm waiting for that to happen to Anders. I think it's going to be a glorious day when it does. Like, I literally can't wait to see him just like knock a cup of coffee out of someone's hand, or like, "Where's my lasagna from the fucking cake?"
Imagine him just saying something like, "Listen, you talk to Semler from now on. I don't want to see you around here. You talk to Semler, that's it. And then that's it. You're banned from talking to Anders,
So anyway, look, all of this chit chat aside, we'll come back to the major. Let's get into the politics, shall we? Let's do it. Are you ready?
Yeah, let's go.
Thorin the Red. Are you ready? Okay, right. So let's just get this out of the way first of all. On the 15th, so 6 days ago now, I did a report over at Breitbart.com, which was several sources had revealed to me that Yahoo and MLG had been talking about a potential acquisition by the tech giant who were based in California. And the sources had said the talks had been advanced. There'd been multiple meetings, and they were about 95% complete to actually agreeing a deal. Now, when I published this, at first, there was this sort of stony silence from MLG. They put a statement in there, which is, "We don't comment on rumor and speculation." This is the sort of thing you're supposed to do when you're a professional organization. Other organizations take note. But then what happened was they started tweeting things, including like references to Mark Zuckerberg, like when he walked into a negotiation and he said, "Let's be honest, we're not going to sell. So this should be done in about 10 minutes. And so Sundance was talking almost as if the deal wasn't going to go ahead. The deal had fallen through, or that MLG weren't even looking to sell. Because why would we sell? Why would you need to pay a fortune to buy us? Now I definitely think that last part is disingenuous, because they've been propped up by $69 million of venture capital since 2006. So there's no way they aren't looking to sell. And I haven't heard who these other sugar daddies might be, but GameSpot did a follow-up piece on it, and it said, well, look, a source familiar with the matter, right, that's worded in a way that makes me believe I spoke to the higher-ups at MLG. That's what that says to me, a source familiar with the matter. I think they're trying to vaguely make it look, and then it was like, they confirmed that talks with MLG and Yahoo did take place, so I guess so far so good for my report. But these discussions are no longer progressing. So there's a chance maybe the deal has fallen through, or there's a chance for very much like the sort of MTG ESEA thing. It's just that it's almost there. People forget that when ESL got acquired by MTG were pretty much based. They were camped in ESL's headquarters in Germany, going through paperwork and doing due diligence for over a fucking month before it got finalized. So I'm gonna maybe say, all right, maybe that deal has fallen through. I don't know. I don't think MLG, they've never struck me as the kind of company that would kind of fuck around like that, if you know what I mean. Others certainly would. So maybe something has happened there. But I mean, obviously MLG, they're talking about doing all these great things next year. For example, I know that they've been looking at making some hires relating to CSGO, specifically for next year. They've obviously got plans, and I believe those plans are gonna hinge upon being bought. So interested to see where that goes. So first, because this is a nice easy one, before we really get into it, just thoughts about MLG and what happens if they get bought by someone of the size of Yahoo, if not Yahoo themselves.
I mean, the interesting thing about that would be bearing about away from the CSGO world. I don't give a fuck what happens with Halo or Call of Duty. I don't even know what games they do right now. I assume it's Call of Duty at the moment. It's the main one they do. In CSGO terms, that would be really sexy in terms of a move, because you want to talk again. If you think about Twitch getting bought by Amazon and stuff, if you want to talk about people that could give a massive cash injection, which ends up hopefully for us being tournaments and buying, putting more money into the community, Yahoo's a great one. I mean, I don't know how big they are as a company, but they're one of those companies where if they can still exist to 2015, they must be doing something right. Because I stopped using Yahoo in about 2004 or something. So I'm amazed they're still around, So I think actually it would make sense, because by the sounds of it, that whole MLG streaming thing was just like a false start. They put all that hype onto all the effort, and the fact that they themselves don't even hype it that much anymore tells me it kind of didn't work out that well, and they just keep it ticking over now, and they almost, it's like a lot of people in esports, Rich. Whenever something doesn't work out, you see this with ESL, you see this with Deman when he's talking about his career before, they can never just admit, okay, I made a mistake. Oh, that wasn't what I thought it'd be. It always has to be retconning what happened into well, no, actually, even though things did totally go to shit, I actually think it's better that they did, because I've learned a lot from it, and I would never change the things that have happened to me in this way in life. For some reason, no one can ever admit they ever made the wrong decision, So I think it sounds like a good move. I mean, it sounds to me as though MLG's in a weird position right now, in as much as they're never going to be the industry leader in most games, as far as I can tell. So they've got to do something to make themselves a bit more relevant. Because at the moment they're good. I still like them. I think they're cool, but as long as they're going to hang on to that whole streaming thing, they're never going to be able to be number one, are they?
Here's one thing I will say. If I was a betting man, I think they get a major next year, based on aspects.
I hope they do. I think it'd be great. From what I've seen, here's the thing. I've said this, I think, on past podcasts, but MLG is one of the most professional orgs I've ever worked with. And I've worked with in fact, I've worked with all of them, because I've even worked with the ESL in 1.6. The thing about a lot of the other orgs is some of them are still learning the ropes, or some of them are used to doing budget events where they try to spend as little as they can to run the event and make all the profit, etc. MLG is the type of people where they just try to do it right. And the people they have there are really experienced. And so time and time again, I've seen their setups have so few of the problems that all these other events have. And in all the problems we will complain about at the World Championship, they never have any of those issues. They've got all the best hardware. They've got the talk boxes that work for everyone. Their setup's always really good. The cameras, they know where to send you to and stuff. They're really professional, actually. I'm amazed, because coming from my only experience of MLG before I worked with them in CSGO was just observing as a spectator their MLG StarCraft events, and I always used to hear people whining like cunts on Reddit about them, as though they were like the evil bad guys, etc. And yet I haven't had that experience myself at all from observing them in CSGO. So I don't know if it's just that they're a small company here, but I think they would be an ideal person to do a major. Because listen, I'll be real, Rich. Okay, DreamHack are our boys. They're the ones doing this major. They're the ones hiring us. DreamHack fuck up, semi-regularly. On their broadcast, they'll make some mistakes, or they'll have a guy where something's not quite wired properly, or they fuck something up. It happens. They're not like the most on point with every little production detail. MLG is extremely good in that respect. So I think it'd be great if they could have a North American major.
Well, I mean, I think the MLG Aspen event, it speaks volumes, like, as to what they could do. I thought the production for that was amazing. And I don't know how much of that was all of MLG's doing, whether there was any sort of contributing factors because it was part of X Games, but I'd wager not. I think it probably did all come from MLG. They've always struck me as being a little bit ahead of the curve, actually, when it comes to production value. When I've watched other broadcasts that they've done. But I guess the negative reputation pretty much comes from the fact that, and we'll get into this in a bit, but the things that we're criticizing ESL for, or rather wanting to do in CSGO, the things they would do if they could get away with it. And I don't think it just applies to ESL. I think everybody would do terrible things if they could get away with it. But MLG have done in Call of Duty. They've had an exclusivity. They have enforced a streaming platform.
They even bought teams, right?
Yeah,
Didn't they buy the Final Boss team or something?
Yep, Final Boss, yes. I think to name but one, actually. I think they have others. So this is where we get into, this kind of, I think a lot of the Call of Duty stuff is that if basically MLG wasn't the place to be for Call of Duty, I think there might have been some pushback, and it perhaps would have got a little bit worse. But I think that the few sort of crumbs of negativity that have filtered down into our scene all stems from their attitude in Call of Duty. So it's something to think about. I think they're being sensible. By all accounts, they're wanting to work with all of these other great organizations to create this Grand Prix circuit, which I reported today. So hopefully that is the case. But anyway, the point I was making was I do think they'll get a major next year. I know Valve don't just want to diversify geographically, but they also want to try and expand the people that they work with. And obviously they do what they do every time. They look at it as like it's a pitch, right? You pitch for the business. You say this is what we can do, and Valve make a decision. But I think MLG, if they're ready to do it for next year, I think they'll get one. I don't.
Well, there's also, Rich, here's another thing that would be very positive. Let's say there's 3 majors again, and let's say they give one to MLG, one to ESL, one to DreamHack. Well, even in the past, there was already sort of a problem in terms of competition that ESL automatically got 2 majors. Therefore, just like the Deman example, they weren't necessarily motivated to improve and to make things better. Okay, yeah. DreamHack could make them look silly on the last one by hiring all the talent, but that's about it. Even that will be forgotten to a degree. Well, with all this MTG stuff that we're going to go into later, DreamHack and ESL suddenly are looking like the same company almost, at least in terms of their goals. So just having MLG there as a counterbalance would be good in that sense. It would mean that there wasn't a monopoly, which obviously Valve doesn't want, on the majors. So it's not like they can be like, as they were saying before, well, you can play in only our tournaments in the majors. Well, at least the majors going to be, one of them might be owned by someone else, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I agree. I think we've got to be very careful. I mean, what's interesting, of course, is which ESL event would it be? If we assume that ESL only get 1 major next year, it would probably have to be Cologne, right?
I mean, I'm hoping for Katowice myself, mate. So I never, ever have to even go to an event that ESL runs. So I hope that they keep holding it. Because the thing is, Rich, what I'm worried about is that if they keep holding events in Germany, they're going to keep getting better and better stadiums. And eventually they're going to be in one of the biggest stadiums in Germany that can host, 40,000, 50,000, football fans. And that's going to be esports fans. And they're going to make the event so huge, it'll be like a true sport. But I don't want that to happen because I don't want to betray the best events they've ever done, which are in the best stadium in the world, which is in Katowice, in the Spodek, and all that, all the incredible amount of income they're going to make off all those fans that they sell the tickets to. I don't want to betray the home of esports. The only place ESL's really, truly been able to replicate the magic. I don't want to betray that much. The best fans in the world in many ways.
Yeah, I think it's very decent of you to take that stance. But I mean, let's imagine this dark future where, I mean, if you had to give ESL one major and one major only, Cologne would have to be the preference, right?
You would think so. I mean, it's in their native country anyway. It's in theory a place where they can control all the circumstances, set it up. It's a major Western country where traveling there is going to be very easy. People aren't going to have to be worried about getting robbed and stuff like that, which, I mean, what's funny is in the World Championships and League of Legends, people were having that concern when they were in Paris, actually, because they were in a dodgy part of Paris where if you go out at the wrong time at night, someone might ask you for your wallet when you're under a bridge somewhere, you know. So I actually think that, for me, it obviously is the one that of the two has more of the positives going for it, and essentially has almost no negatives as far as I'm concerned, except you have to go to Germany. So if you don't like Germany, that's about the only negative, right?
We're not starting on Germany now, Duncan, are we? Come on.
Listen, Germany's always been there in my back pocket, mate. I've been to Hanover enough times that I don't care, mate. I may as well have been to Auschwitz. I don't give a fuck. That's not technically in Germany, but you know what I mean. I've sort of conflated the two there, haven't I, Rich?
Jesus Christ. So anyway, I think you probably would see something like MLG, DreamHack, and ESL dividing it, but I think it's going to be a strong field where people are going to be fucking fighting tooth and nail for it. And I think MLG will be the American representatives. I know ESL have made this big expansion into America recently. Probably thinking that maybe San Jose one day could be a major once that gets settled and it's regularly on the circuit, something along those lines. But I honestly think. I think Katowice could be one of the ones to drop next year as a major, because I just think the number of events that are going to come as a result of this circuit, which we're going to talk about now, coupled with the fact that, let's not forget, the Turner League is confirmed. That's happening. That's going to start next year. That's 20 weeks of programming next year with weekends that deliberately are scheduled not to clash with majors. Plus, you've got other companies coming in who are making, like PGL, for example, their production value's been incredibly good. They'll want to make a pitch, perhaps maybe for their own and not partnered with DreamHack, perhaps. MLG definitely going to be up there. So I think it's going to be interesting. I think it's going to be a lot tougher, and that's why ESL need to guard against complacency. And because of that, I think the one event they can guarantee to be of a certain standard is going to be at their HQ, right? It's going to be in their backyard. That's going to be Cologne. So I guess we'll see what happens. Obviously, this is all wild speculation at this point. Who knows? Maybe we get more majors next year. That'd be nice. I think it'll be tough to fit them all in, though. But anyway, let's get to today's news. Again, broke this over on Breitbart.com. Major tournament organizers look to join forces to create Counterstrike Grand Prix in 2016. Basically, what this is several sources that work for these companies have confirmed that they've been in talks. So this is a coalition of MLG, CEVO, PGL, Gfinity, Faceit, and Starladder, and they're looking to group together to create a global Grand Prix style circuit. So I'm guessing this will be like an ATP maybe system, where you get points and everything, and there's a big event at the end of the year. But where it gets really interesting is they're clubbing together and they're going to put a minimum of $5 million prize money for the tour up front. And in fact, some sources place this amount as high as $9 million. Someone a while ago, I think, linked me to a tweet, and it was Sundance. I don't know if it's subsequently been deleted, but Sundance was saying 9 is a big number or something on Twitter. And they right.
What a clown that guy is, mate. At least here's the thing I like about him, Rich. He actually knows that he's a clown. Like, he knows that he's just fucking dancing a merry jig to entertain us little peasants that have no idea what's going on. You just know he posts some shit like that. He comes out of whatever. I mean, we'll just make it PC. We'll say like whatever sort of protein drink haze he's in. He leans over to the laptop. He types in 9 seems like a nice round number. Presses enter, leans back over to whatever Filipino bird he's lying with in bed and goes, I just blew the internet out, baby. And thinks he just nailed it completely. But I love him. By the way, if you're going to make a movie out of someone, he'd be the guy you'd make out of the tournament organizers. Some of these people we're talking about from ESL are just fucking sad little pencil pushers who got beyond middle management and now they're ready to wreak havoc on all the jocks that were bad to them in school. Like, at least that guy's a character,
Oh yeah, but fucking, I love Sundance. I mean, apparently, like, at all of these events, there's always like these crazy sort of after parties. If he's there, and he always takes people like to do these crazy things and crazy excursions and stuff. Like takes everybody drunk skiing and shit. So he's a great guy. I got a lot of time for him. But anyway, so that was why people started talking about the 9 million. But of course, everyone needs to wait and see how much money they can bring to the table. Now, where it gets interesting is the details.
Answer this for me, Rich. Explain this to me. Okay, here's the part I'm not getting. You can't just say that in a throwaway manner. So the figure is around 5 million. Some say as high as 9 million. First of all, that's almost twice as much, Rich. And secondly, I'm not sure in what world anyone can nonchalantly say, actually, maybe 4 million more than that. Like, is that some sort of thing where Kim Rom's like, fuck it, 9 million, 9 million.
Well, I think what it boils down to is
what are they doing? 6 million, 9 million. Fuck it, I can get it. Listen, guys, I'm good for it. You know, I'm good for it.
I think we're gonna have 5 million is the minimum. It's the baseline, right? They're not gonna do any less than that. Everybody is comfortable saying we can do 5 million, but I think that the fact that it could go up to 9 million is going to be dependent on other revenue streams, sponsorships, investments, and indeed, I imagine in the situation of MLG being purchased. So I imagine what they're saying is they'll double down and put more money in. If
I love even the phrasing of that, though. Like, listen, okay, we've got 5 million. You've got 5 million in the bank. Okay, you want to play for more? You want to go for broke here? Come on, let your balls hang. What's wrong with you? You're not willing to go for it? Come on, you can do it. I've seen you. You've got a few million hidden away. You over there, you haven't paid anyone in about 3 years. Come on, 9 million. Let's get it going. Let's show these fuckers what we mean business, okay? Fuck ESL. Down with ESL, and then the chant starts.
And just so you know, Sundance watching, he just messaged me to say, I delete all my tweets and I write them in that exact voice, and she's Korean, not Filipino. So
fair enough. So I should have known. I've made a horrendous mistake. Okay.
Yeah.
I've got a question for you, Rich. So when this news came out and you read out the list of organizations there, the sad part about that list is, okay, so Facet's doing their own 250k tournament, DreamHack Winter, so they're becoming one of the big boys, okay. But if we're being honest, everyone else in that list has been doing medium-sized events or even small events in certain cases. Like some of the worst star ladders haven't been that big. The first thing I thought when I saw that list there, Rich, is you remember all these reports about how, well, technically MTG hasn't bought DreamHack yet. Well, then why is DreamHack not in the coalition there, mate? That's a bit weird. Remember, DreamHack were the good guys. They were the ones who were against what ESL were doing, and the exclusivity, and magically they're not in the coalition, and they're about to be bought by the same company who owns ESL, and then they're somehow suspiciously not even present in this whole discussion.
So here's the thing, right? Obviously, the MTG deal, like with ESEA, it's as close to as done as can be done. But like, obviously, these things can all fall apart at the last minute. Let's say that happens with Yahoo and MLG. Let's say, we saw this happen with Twitch. It was meant to be Google, boom, Amazon. These things can happen, right? Like at the last minute. So the issue I think we've got with this is that DreamHack know they've got to pick a side. Now, it's either get bought for an exorbitant amount of money, which is what people are talking about. It's crazy, the reason that the talks have stalled is based on valuation, by all accounts. But equally, this team union thing has added an extra fucking layer of pressure, where the team owners are saying, you got to pony up $75,000 or our teams aren't coming to your event anymore. Now, a lot of stops on the DreamHack tour were 50,000, 60,000. Like maybe they could find that extra money for all of those stops. But if they don't, they got a problem because suddenly they're a tier 2, and not just by ESL's estimation, they would legitimately be a tier 2 circuit because they would only have tier 2 teams competing there. So now that puts extra pressure on, do we accept the buyout from MTG and become part of this evil empire over here on the left? Do we go with this partnership? And what people probably don't know is that when the first exclusivity league was being talked about in April, and we know that it was ESL, Vulcan, all of the team owners, and they went to Twitch TV offices in San Francisco to have this talk, and the talk broke down because people felt they couldn't be trusted because it all got leaked out. And, there was talks of exclusivity there. When that happened, there was a meeting, I believe it was at DreamHack Bucharest, where representatives from Faceit, representatives from StarLadder, representatives from, I can't remember the other two. Anyway, they tried to make this alliance of like 4. It was DreamHack was one, and it was going to be like a 4-team strong alliance, and everyone was like, "Yeah, we're totally going to do this." And then, of course, when people looked at the logistics of it, it completely fell apart, and it was like, "Yeah, we can't really do that. It's just not going to work. There's too many uncertain factors." So this is where I worry about this coalition, because they're all going to have to agree to do less events. It's that simple. And less events ultimately means less profit. Even if running an event isn't the most profitable thing you can do, even if you like Faceit and it's about what you do online more than what you do offline, it's still, if you do them correctly, obviously they're designed to make profit. And if you're doing 8 of those a year, and all of a sudden you're like, "Hey, we're all bros, we're in the coalition. What's that? We gotta do half." That's the profit you make from that revenue stream halved for the sake of playing nice within a space. So that's where I'm worried. That's what I'm worried about. I don't know how that dynamic's going to work moving forward long term. Can all of these separate entities play nice? And esports history tells me no. Someone will break rank eventually.
No, I agree with you on that. That's the biggest problem, is that at the moment, the only benefit they all have is the fascist idea that, like, if we all group together, we can all be powerful, okay? The problem there is, in every single fascist scenario you have, someone within the group who can do a power play inevitably does and tries to do a coup and take over, which is what would happen here. Like, for example, if there's $9 million and $3 million comes from one company, well, then you think they're just going to let other people dictate the terms? No. Then the guy who's only putting in 250,000 becomes the bitch of the guy with the 3 million. So my question, though, is the DreamHack one, Rich. Explain this. If ESL is going to do a league and they're going to block everyone from entering leagues except the majors, doesn't that effectively signal that ESL and DreamHack will become one entity in some sense?
Well, so this is the point, right? All the sources I talked to said they're well aware and very well informed about how the MTG and DreamHack talks have been progressing, but nothing has been agreed yet. And they were saying, "We'd love DreamHack to come in with us. The door is open." But DreamHack are, they're in this precarious position because they can lose a lot of ground. On the one hand, this is fucking DreamHack. They've always been up there. They're one of the best companies in esports. They've got one of the most respected tours. They've always pushed the boundaries in terms of production value and stuff. There's a reason why they're as popular as they are. And of course, let's not forget, with DreamHack Winter, they've got the single biggest LAN as part of that tour. Obviously, yeah, it's got some other shit going on there, but it's a spectacle in its own right. It's a phenomenon in its own right. Now, they on the one hand, hey, why do we're posseing up with people that haven't even been around for like a fraction of the time we have? The Faceits, the Gfinities, the PGLs, the Cevos, the Star Ladders, and we're having to throw our hat into the ring with them to kind of stay afloat and be part of a global tour. And how many, think about all the events that DreamHack have done this year. How many of those are going to get cut to fit in? So that's problem number one for them. Like on the right, it's like, shit, we've got to scale down what we're doing, even though we haven't got any other, like, legitimate reason to do it, apart from maybe these teams aren't going to turn up. But what if we can get the money? Then you've got on the left, MTG is saying, come on. We've had relationships before, but we're all Swedish. Come on. We've already got ESL, ESEA's in the bag. Come on. We can fuck everyone up. We got the best thing here. We got American infrastructure. We got ESL, the industry leader. We got a Swedish media group that has its own fucking online streaming platform.
Richard, who actually
TV
calls
stations all around
ESL
the
the
world.
industry leader aside from themselves?
I actually believe they're the industry leader.
In what respect?
In terms of okay, so when it comes to running events, I think they are one of the most reliable, dependable companies. I think they've got unprecedented levels of experience. I think, yes, you can say the modern ESL is a very different entity to the past ESL, but they've got a pedigree and history that virtually no other company in our space has. And also, whatever you think about shit like drugs testing, and you know I'm vehemently against it, and I think it's putting the fucking cart before the horse. It's still only they could have pulled that off. Only they had the clout to sit down with genuine, legitimate doping agencies and put something in place. So I do think the term industry leader is fair.
Well, here's my question then. If they're the industry leader, then first of all, and by the way, they self-describe themselves as that. I've seen it done before.
Yeah, I know, but everyone in esports does.
Okay, but if they're the industry leader, then here's a couple of questions. A, why not be a leader? Why not show the way for other people? And there we go. You'll have a positive influence on esports. Doing exclusivity leagues, the opposite of being a leader. It's just saying everyone else get the fuck out. I'm just going to be the only person. I'm not leading anyone. I'm all that exists. And second question would be, in terms of that sort of thing, if they're really the leader right now, if they're doing stuff the best way and they have the right philosophy and direction they're going in, why would they need exclusivity league? They'd already have all the power and everything they'd need. There'd be no reason to shut anyone out.
Oh, but it was like, okay, so when we talked about the first exclusivity league, sources within ESL all said the same thing. It was like, first of all, I mean, obviously, look, you've got to take it all with a pinch of salt because they're going to try and sell it like they're doing something altruistic. So the first thing was they were like, we don't want oversaturation of events because we've seen what's happened with Dota 2. And if we and they did have plans to do an exclusivity type league in Dota 2, and they never enacted them.
That would have never worked.
Well, no, it probably not, and I guess that's why it never went ahead. But they were like, "Look, we've learned about that, and we've seen how the oversaturation of events has really made that scene. You know, and it's happened to StarCraft as well. ESL understand these lessons, so having an exclusivity league where it would be super lucrative to compete in, effectively a Premier League." So akin to like what we've got in soccer or in NFL or whatever, just one de facto league where all the top teams compete. It does make sense. If it was lucrative enough to do it, that organizations never had to attend other smaller events. And I'm like you, I like the open circuit format. I think it's better. But let's just say if it was lucrative enough, it would make more sense for those teams, it would make more sense for the sponsors, it would make more sense for the fans in some ways. There would be a lot of positives that it would bring, not necessarily to the purists like me and you, but just in general. Now, that's obviously the way they're saying, hey, that's like something altruistic that we're trying to do. We're trying to save esports from itself, you know? I guess that's how they're trying to sell it. But ultimately, what it's really about is, this is a company that's been to the brink. Me and you both remember when they weren't paying out prize money. Me and you both remember when they were having to
Have they ever admitted that, by the way? To this day, have they ever admitted it?
Well, I mean, I think they must have done, right? I think they must have done.
I've never seen them admitted anywhere, mate. I've been eagle-eyed on that shit. They've never, ever admitted that they didn't pay out money. They just always claimed it was the rare exception. They've never admitted that widespread they didn't pay out the money. Even though now it shouldn't even matter. Like if it's not, what's funny is now that that's not the problem anymore, you should be able to say, yeah, listen, there were some bad times. You know, we had problems with liquidity. We didn't have the sponsorship we have now. So, you know, there were times that we had issues paying people. So they don't even do it to this day, mate. The thing with ESL, I've never seen them ever admit they did anything wrong, mate. Except as a publicity stunt to just turn things around.
Yeah, and you're right in that sense. I mean, they've never admitted, or rather, there's never been a sort of public breakdown from ESL about how disgraceful it actually was, which was obviously, I mean, this wouldn't have impacted on you quite so much at the time, but so the Counterstrike source player base that was in ESL in terms of online and not just from the competitive scene. I'm just talking about all the casual leagues and ladders and stuff they run. It made up the largest single game that they had in their kind of, all the genres and all the games they did. Now, what they were doing at the time was there was Counter-Strike source winners from like, EPSs and, whatever the fuck it was back then that hadn't been paid. And they sent emails out to them saying, sorry that you still haven't got your money from 18 months, 2 years ago, but we've had this StarCraft event come up, and we have to pay for these Chinese and Taiwanese and Korean StarCraft players to attend, so you're not getting paid. And I got leaked that email, And that was when I started sort of privately writing letters or emails, you know, behind the scenes, like saying, you got to sort this out. You have got to sort this out. Now, ESL's reaction to me publishing this publicly, which I did back in, I think it was still Cadred back then, it was before we migrated over to Esports 7. They called, and I think it was Ralph that actually did this. They called my bosses and were like, anything we can do about Richard Lewis? Anything we can do? Can we stop him publishing this stuff? We don't think it's very fair, or, you know, we don't want to labor on it. Yes, we've got some financial problems. Do we really have to talk about it? And obviously my bosses, they used to back me to the hilt over at Heaven Media. So they were like, well, is it true? And they were like, yeah. But can we take it down anyway? And they were like, no, obviously we're not going to do that. So, so that was. And people probably forget that I used to go after ESL pretty hard. I was like you at the time, because I was so disgusted with how my community was being treated. And I knew these players, and, you know, some of these were young guys who wanted to go to university, and they weren't making a lot of money, and they were trying to balance study and playing, and the game was kind of semi-pro. You had to be the very best to make anything close to a living out of it. And these guys had any form of uncertain levels of incomes unacceptable. But meanwhile, because StarCraft 2 was the new kid on the block and was the big thing, the money ESL had was getting pumped into that because they wanted to keep it perpetuating. And they were bailed out by another round of venture capital, if I remember rightly. There was a press release that's obtainable if you just Google it. I can't remember. It was some French group, I think. Anyway. And obviously the Raid Call sponsorship was a really big deal as well. And if anyone remembers any of the IEMs and the ESL ones around about that time, you had that weird sort of trend of the guy from Raid Call getting up between games at the events and going, hi, I just want to tell you all about Raid Call. And everyone was like, who the fuck is this guy? Some like 50-year-old businessman. And he would go, Raid Call is great. It's like you go on there and you can talk to people. It's like, yeah, we got a fucking ton of them, mate. We got TeamSpeak. We got Ventrilo. This new one's come out called Mumble. Yeah, but Raid Call,
industry leaders.
Industry leaders. So and then of course we all remember chronologically, that was when Red Eye went there, and Red Eye publicly said, you know, he said, when I joined, I said I didn't want to be associated with any outstanding payments, and they did work through all of the back payments, and it's all settled now. But it was pretty bad. In fact, if since we're doing full fucking disclosure, because much like yourself, Duncan, I do feel bulletproof these days. After all, I write for a right-wing publication that I don't even know who it's funded by. Probably it's the Koch brothers. I think I'm untouchable now. That's it. I've made it. So we'd even written the obituaries. Everybody in esports, all the guys over at DreamHack, all the guys over at fucking ESEA, every like journalist worth their salt. You know, it was literally, we were like, yeah, ESL are going under, man. I mean, they're going under. So before all this influx of money popped them up, we were like, literally, they're done. But we already had it like typed up. That's how fucking close it came. So that's why when I talk about them clawing back from the brink, like I've got to respect it, you know. But that's why I think, sure, I agree with you. There should have been some sort of full disclosure, like, yeah, we really fucked up. But still, they didn't go under. They did settle all of the debts. And if you look at where they are right now, it is like day and night. Like the new ESL is a very different beast to the old ESL. And you'd have to have some sort of inherent bias, dare I say it, to not recognize the huge strides they've made since those days. And again, I still see ESL as having given us, you know, some good stuff to esports. You know, all this Machiavellian posturing and stuff that's going on, it's what any company in their position would do. Like, once you're the industry leader, what you do is you look to cement your position. You look to become unassailable. And that's all ESL are doing right now. It's not that I don't find it, you know, it's not like it doesn't stick in my craw. I don't find it distasteful. But just looking at it from a business perspective, I don't think you can be too enraged by it all.
Yeah, but the problem is, Rich, you can do good things, but it never in some way like justifies like the dodgy shit you do. Like there was a
No, of
great
course.
quote by Stannis Baratheon, one of my favorite characters in Game of Thrones, who sadly was I can only assume whoever made the TV show Game of Thrones had their own agenda where they didn't like certain characters because they essentially changed some things in the TV show and fucked this character's whole philosophy and ideology in terms of what happened in the last season. But he had a great line which he was talking about that guy who's his like right hand man, the Davos guy, the Onion Knight, and he says to him because obviously he chopped that guy's hand off. But the guy was a smuggler, true. That's why he chopped his hand off. But he's also a hero. In fact, smuggling's how he actually saved those people on Dragonstone or whatever it's called. And he had this great line where he said, "A good act does not wash out the bad, nor the bad are good." Like the idea is. You can do loads of wonderful things, but if you're a total cunt on a certain point, everyone isn't supposed to go, well, he did do those good things, didn't he? They go, no, each point deserves its own reward. And sometimes the reward is you get fucking pasted for it, no matter what wonderful things you did.
Yeah, but I mean, okay, so let's compare the old ESL to CPL, right?
Okay.
I think this is a sort of fair comparison. So we all know that CPL really pushed and drove the industry forward, that it was way ahead of its time. It had a global tour. It gave us all of the great early tournaments and all the great early esports memories we have. Obviously, I come in at the back end of it. I don't need to tell you this. All of the people that were household names in the very early days of esports, they made their name thanks to CPL. Yes, it wasn't all good. Painkiller, right? Obviously, problems when money gets involved. But the CPL tour did do a lot of good. Then it started to do a lot of bad. It started reaching out to developers and saying, what's that? You've made a piece of shit game that's just not competitively viable. Pay us lots of money and we will pretend it's an esport. And I can't even remember the name of some of the fucking real-time strategy titles that they had competitions for. Then, obviously, the classic starts, cash flow problems. Yeah, you've got Angel Munoz, dubbed the godfather of esports, right? I'll be in your documentary, but you cannot film my house, right? You cannot film my massive house that has been bought with dirty esports money. By the way, did I mention no one's getting paid at the moment? Yeah, okay, wicked. So you end up with this like real sour taste. I know people now to this day that are still owed money. I'm pretty sure Odie over at Dignitas, I think they're still owed like $60,000 from CPLs. That is just obviously it's never going to materialize now, So CPL brought us so much, but then they kind of tarnished their own legacy. Now, what ESL did was they brought us so much, they tarnished their legacy, and that's the point where they should have fallen off into the abyss, but they didn't, and now they're here. And that's why I often think of this new ESL as a very different beast to the old one, because they really don't have anything in common. Their business models, their size, their scope, what they're looking to achieve, the sort of, they're never going to have to nickel and dime people in online cups again.
But they have some of the same people in charge leading them ideologically in the direction that they're going. So those people would love it if what you said is correct, Richard, that there was an old ESL and a new ESL. Problem is the bridge between the leadership aspects is quite similar.
Yeah, you're right. And this is the
so problem. Anyway, here's the question I have for you, basically, is ultimately, to boil it down, why have an exclusivity league? What positive for the esports scene as a whole can they provide? Because as far as I can tell, their way of mind-fucking themselves is to think, well, we know what's best for you. Even if you don't know it, it has to be our way. I mean, that's kind of condescending, right?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely on point there. Look, the reality is one of the reasons why I leaked the fucking first exclusivity league, even though I probably could have held that as a bargaining chip for, wonderful fiscal rewards down the line. Let's not forget, nobody wanted that out. No, well, apart from the team owners, right, who it benefited, because they were like, for them, that news being out there was basically saying, hey, we are willing to negotiate now for exclusivity. We will play in a league for the highest bidder, but you've got to give us some 6-6 Skrilla, For the 6 Skrilla, we're willing to do anything. But Twitch didn't want people to know that meeting was going on in their fucking offices. That doesn't benefit Twitch. Twitch didn't want to be fucking seen to be involved with any of that shit. Twitch are like, hey, look, we wear purple hoodies. We're benign. We're not here to harm anyone. Yeah, we are owned by Amazon, but forget about that. Yeah, we're all esports people. We're not in it for the money. We're in it for the passion. So you've got that. First and foremost, they definitely didn't want it out. Vulcan, who are one of the most unilaterally despised companies in esports in their short time, they definitely didn't want it out. Right? I mean, they don't want to be fucking associated with that shit. ESL definitely didn't want it out because every time a story like this breaks, ESL got absolutely hauled over the coals. And there's you with your fucking belt off wrapped around your knuckles. It's criticism time. It's coming. They don't want that. So nobody wanted that out there. But I probably could have gone to them and been like, look, you know, is there a job coming up? Yeah. Like when Carmack goes to LA, maybe I can be the new king of Katowice or whatever the title is. Can I come in? I'll do that.
I wouldn't wish that hell upon you, Rich, the king of Katowice. That's not a title you want associated with.
Mate, I would give you a formal pardon. It'd be amazing. Okay. Just imagine it. Like it would bring you out, and it would be like you'd be there, and it'd be like, Thorin, what do you have to say to the people of Katowice? And I don't know. You'd just be something like, all right,
freedom, and then everyone just rushed me with little special Katowice engraved daggers.
Yeah. So anyway, edgy, so I did very edgy. I didn't fucking do that, and I put it out there. And as I said, ESL were kind of talking about how, like, hey, you know, yeah, this could be a good thing for the community because obviously they fucking oversaturation is a problem. But here's the thing: exclusivity can't ever be good for esports. Every time any scumfuck company gets a stranglehold on esports, it gets worse for everybody. Everyone gets fucked over. Let's look at it historically. CPL were that scumfuck company. They were the industry leaders. And in fact, actually, here's where it gets interesting. Let's start looking at what it means to be an industry leader and how you behave when you're an industry leader. So CPL, industry leaders, they basically sold their own tour down the river by taking on games that weren't fit for purpose, taking huge amounts of money, you know, to have them on this tour, and then stop paying people. Meanwhile, the executive level all got rich, and all the staff didn't get paid. Had salaries that they just had to write off when CPL went under. We wait a bit. CGS, the Murdochs. Right, they've come in. James Murdoch comes in, $60 million. We've got a 5-year plan. It's gonna last forever. We're all gonna make it, and everybody gravitated towards that. Even people now that I've got a lot of respect for gravitated towards that with their hands out, and they said, "Look, man, I've been working in esports for fucking almost 10 years. Some of them, by that point, I want the fucking money. I want the payout." And they went, okay, well, you've got to say that everything that esports isn't is the best. Okay, so all of this shit, you've got to say third-person Counterstrike is good. Yeah, you've got to say Dead or Alive is the best competitive fucking fighting game of all time. People had literally just these turds just tumbling out of their mouths, like, and it did kill a lot of people to have to say it, but say it you must. And it was fake, and they were all fucking filming like these reaction moments, and then if it wasn't good enough, they go, "Can you do that reaction again?" And people actually did it, and then stranglehold, right? They started pulling press passes from people. They started banning people from attending fucking the events that they were running. They started trying to take, basically saying who you could and couldn't hire if you had been involved with CGS. And then they went under. And those people that drank the Kool-Aid, do you know what they got for their fucking time? They got sent an email. That was it. It was an email that was Jewel announced as they fucking put it up on the website. Yeah, sorry, we won't be renewing our service. Get fucked. So then, at this point, you've got this vacuum. This is where you get the rise of ESL again. And ESL came in, and that was when ESL had this rocky period. I think they were trying to fill this kind of void that was there, and that was when they started not paying out the money and stuff and blah, 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 because they were maybe trying to do too much to fill this void. And now, I don't know, kind of, you've got this weird little interim period where maybe there's arguments for DreamHack and all these other companies. Now here we are, and ESL are the industry leaders, and nobody wants to fucking slip. No one wants to fucking lose the crown. So how do you do it? The only way you can secure your position, is exclusivity. But at no point have any of these exclusive deals, these exclusive leagues, these groups of powerful entities within esports, at no point has this ever benefited the greater good of esports. In fact, every time one of these companies has gone under, which they all do, by the way, they've all got a shelf life. Every time one of them goes under, it completely fucking resets esports. It's like an etch a sketch. Just right back to normal, guys. Back to square one, and it's happened multiple times. CGS was post CGS was a fucking wasteland. Killed North American Counterstrike still to this fucking day. You know, it's unbelievable. So I agree with you. Yes, you cannot have an exclusivity league and it'd be good for the whole of esports. But this is what everybody wants. They're not thinking about the bigger picture as much as they might profess. They're thinking about what happens next year. We're running a company. We've got hundreds, if not thousands of employees that we need to think about. How do we get the best deal for ourselves? And a lot of the time, this is the thing, when community and business collide, the community is going to get fucked because the business has to come first. That's how businesses think. So, they're not the only ones that have had talks about exclusivity. They're not the only people that have mulled it over. They're not the only people that would do this. It's just ESL probably is a little bit more brazen. And I think that's why it sticks in people's craw. Because what you say is that they do. They're like, hey, we're the industry leaders. We know best. We know what's good for everyone. So we're going to do what the fuck we want.
And that's the point, though. If anyone else does this, like you notice, I've multiple times hinted so far that if ESL and DreamHack are now one entity, well, guess what? DreamHack isn't that cool independent company who was standing against this stuff. They're now part of the evil empire. So if they want to do it, they'll get the same criticism as ESL does, and in the same way, except obviously maybe not the same direct manner, because they tend to handle PR a bit differently. So they're not as open to obvious criticism for stupid PR moves. But even so, if they're willing to go down that route, you can't stay silent about that. Like, that's one of the big problems. What you were describing about the CGS shit there is that all these people, some of them who still exist in esports today and would tell you that they do it for the love of esports and all the rest of it, they were willing to compromise almost everything for the basis that they thought it would make esports bigger. And what they didn't realize was when you compromise everything, you are left with nothing to guide your direction. Therefore, you're willing to do anything at that point in time. And as a result, what you originally set out to accomplish will not be what ends up happening, even if it succeeds. And I can't see how it ever will succeed. To me, when you make an exclusive league, you're literally saying, I'm willing to kill this entire game dead forever for the narcissistic notion that only I can truly decide the direction the game goes in. And if it dies because I take it this direction, so be it. I'm willing to have that happen. Well, then I don't ever want to hear that person tell me publicly that they love esports and that they care about this growing as a movement, or they don't. That's all an absolute lie, because they are willing to compromise that at every point just for the sake of this one goal, which is them being the one who controls everything.
Yeah. Well, no, but so this is what I mean, right? So let's just look at some of the differences, because we haven't even got into the real fucking part of it all. So one of the quotes that I put in the article was, what we're being told is that ESL and MTG are speaking directly with teams about agreeing to be purchased outright or signing up to their league exclusively for 2016. We are told this agreement would forbid them from playing in any other league, and only other tournaments that they'd be allowed to attend would be Valve's own the majors. So let's talk about this, because Ralph, who's obviously the head of ESL, he's tweeted at me today saying lol at that quote. And again, the conceit of this, like he's inferring I'm lying because I'm quoting someone verbatim in an article. Like, what am I supposed to do? Like, say, great quote that, mate. Can't use it though. ESL.
I think there needs to be a website, mate. You know what we need to do? Maybe me, you, and someone else should fund a little bit. It won't take much money. We'll set up a website, and what we'll do is this website will be an archive chronologically of all the lies told by esports orgs. So every time they said a player wasn't going to sign and he signed a week later, we'll have that up there. It'll be on the date of this year, on this month, and all we'll do in future is anytime someone says any of this, we'll just sort of say search them on that database. and you'll see all the lies of these companies and all the back history of them doing all their bullshit. Because that's the biggest problem, is that people haven't been around long enough or don't remember these small instances or the order things happened in. So almost every one of these companies who use this approach are themselves the serial liars.
I think that website exists, isn't it, called Team Liquid?
I mean, in theory.
Anyway, yeah, because fuck those guys. But anyway, you know, so he said that this is a lie, that they haven't been talking to teams. Well, everyone knows it's one of the worst kept secrets in the fucking industry that MTG have talked to NIP about buying them. I can't be the only guy that hears that every fucking event, every day on fucking Skype, from everyone in Counterstrike. I can't be the only person. So are we pretending that's not real for the sake of public posturing? And I know then, you know, I say I know, I am told by multiple, I'm not even talking, you know how like when you say multiple sources, you really mean 3 or 4. Right? That's multiple sources, right? And obviously, you've got to do a source grading. How reliable is this source? How close to the story are they? You know, you go through a process when you're verifying the story. The MTG talking to NIP is fucking like dozens, probably. It's probably is in the dozens. So I don't know. This is a crazy wildfire rumor to start, and it fits in with everything else that's been going on. I mean, so anyway, let's just say they aren't even talking about direct ownership. There is absolutely no doubt in my mind that they have talked directly to teams and said to them, sign up to our league now. And they gave them a deadline. I think the deadline was, it might have been last Friday. Anyway, irrelevant. They were told, sign up by this point if you want into this wicked, awesome, all singing, all dancing exclusive league that we're doing. And I don't think any team got back to them because this coalition went out to those team owners and those orgs and said, yeah, we've got something that's going to blow this shit out the water though next year. So don't sign a fucking thing. Don't sign a thing because we got $5 million you could be having. You know, the Turner League isn't exclusive. This coalition league isn't exclusive. The only people talking about exclusivity are over on the MTG side of things. And that for me, I don't see how ESL could be out there publicly going like, you know, this report's preposterous. Everything fits. Everything makes sense. The sources are there. Everybody, you know, every time someone leaks something to me and it's bad about ESL, the ESL response is that, I don't know, oh, but they're doing it because they're biased. They're using you. They're lying. But the exclusivity league thing was right, wasn't it? That really happened. Like, no one's even denying that now. So I don't get where they're coming from, trying to be defensive about this. Like, it sucks that obviously they haven't had time to respond to this sort of coalition thing being leaked.
Also, what a great statement. This is just a lie. Nothing else. Not saying what is the case. Not saying what about it's a lie. Just, this is a lie. Haha. Great. Brilliant, mate. Great comment, yeah. I know everything. Therefore, I can tell you guys I have a secret, and that is not it. Heh. Brilliant. Yeah. Industry leader of bullshit tweets.
So I don't get that, but equally, you know, if this is true, and let's say this is one big misunderstanding, which it cannot be, but let's just say it is, and ESL and MTG, whoever's doing the talking, aren't talking directly to team owners and franchises and trying to lock them into an exclusivity league, which everyone says they are, right? Let's just say it's a misunderstanding. Well, you can't blame MLG, CEVO, PGLG, Finity, Faceit, and Starladder for clubbing together and being like, well, fuck, if that's the route they're going down, if they're going to go for a franchise system effectively, what we're going to have to do our thing. We've got to offer something bigger and better. Otherwise, we're all going to get fucked by ESL, ESEA, and possibly DreamHack. So even if it's a misunderstanding, it's an understandable one. So yeah, this story, I don't know, man. I think it's getting. Look, we always knew 2016 was going to be dirty. We knew it was going to be fucked up. We knew that with the Turner League being out there and other TV companies looking at it and everyone wanting to buy esports properties for the purposes of content creation, as I said on Unfiltered the other day, that's the business model. MTG aren't buying ESL because they want to run an esports league. MTG are buying ESL because their tournaments are content that they can broadcast. That's why they want ESEA and DreamHack and everyone else. It's about content. That's why Yahoo want MLG, content. That's what it's about. So, I knew the bidding was going to get dirty, but let's be real. You've got 3 majors, maybe more. You've got 20 weeks of Turner, and you've got ESL are going to do their thing because they're ESL, and now these companies need to do their thing. Where are we going to fit this all in? Like, something's going to have to give. So, I'm at a loss, really, to sort of I don't even know which way is the best way to go. Obviously, it's the way that doesn't demand exclusivity. But then we get into this realm of implied exclusivity. A lot of people allege this at Turner. They said this was an implied exclusivity because it was so long. It was 20 weeks long, and you were broadcasting on Friday nights. So if there was an event that weekend, obviously you couldn't go. So it was exclusivity by any other name. I still think there's a world of difference between saying, yeah, police out your commitment to our league and saying you cannot compete in another league. You belong to us now. But still, it's going to get real tricky to fit everything in. And I still think some of these companies involved in this posturing and maneuvering are going to fall. I don't see how they can all make it out and do well for themselves.
I mean, there's also the other factor as well, which is one aspect I don't think people have thought through is what if half the teams say, yeah, we'll do the ESL exclusive league, and half the teams don't. So now you've got an exclusive league, you've locked them in, but you've only got half the teams. Now, by the model that these people, by the way, the great thing is, people don't realize this who are fans. Don't worry, the guys at the top of esports, in some ways, know as much as you guys. They also have no clue what the fuck's going on. There's a great saying, okay, in the army, which is called like snafu, which means something like, I can't remember what it means, but it's something or other, like signal, normal, all fucked up or something like that, right? And the idea is that at the top of the army, the absolute general guys who never go on the battlefield actually have no real clue what's going on, and they can only do really broad strokes because they don't get all the information. Like, the idea is, in a hierarchy, you're never going to give the real story to the guy who's above you because he's your boss and you have your own social implications there and pressures. So you'll only tell him, yeah, things are going all right if it's like really going to shit, or like, nah, things are going well if it's like sort of okay. And so as a result, they ended up in their worldview is totally distorted, just the same as the absolute grunt who doesn't know anything about the political stuff is also in a terrible scenario. So the point I'm getting at here is the people at the top of these orgs really are deluded enough. The people at the top of the developments, the developers for games, at the top of the tournament organizers really believe that these games are going to last 30 years and that they're building the next NFL. They actually believe this shit, guys. They don't know that your game's probably going to be dead in 5 years, mate, and we'll all be into a new game and you won't be involved. So as a result, these guys make these crazy decisions, really thinking, yeah, well, it doesn't matter if my exclusive league has like 4 shit teams in it now, because one day, because I own the franchise, that'll be the next big team. Well, it won't be, mate, 'cause in 4 years, that's not going to happen. In 2 years, that's not going to happen. And so as a result, it's actually like, to me, that's the biggest problem for them, is they need to succeed entirely or their own success will destroy them. Like, if they succeed on a small level, they'll end up with 4 shit teams from tier 4 and 2 from tier 3 and 1 or 2 from tier 2 and 1 from tier 1. And that league will be terrible and the exclusivity will crush it entirely. Is that possible?
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, when you go down this franchising kind of model, if indeed that is what they're doing, or when you go down and basically say, look, let's have an agreement where your team only competes in our league, which is kind of a franchise, but not. Because obviously a franchise is where you own a brand and you effectively lease it out. You do create this real problem. I mean, first of all, you've got to financially compensate the organizations that agree to that, because they're cutting out other revenue streams, they're cutting out other exposure, they're locked in. Then of course, you've got the fundamental problems of what happens in terms of spending power when they want to bring new players in. What happens then? Let's say, for example, they want to bring in players from a team that haven't signed that exclusivity agreement, and they're like, well, fuck it, we're making all this sick Skrilla over here because we're still competing in an open circuit, and we've got the tournament money and everything else. So why would we sell to you? Players might not want to do that. They might feel that their exposure levels are going to be less. They might not want to agree to a transfer. There's all sorts of shit. I mean, it's such a complex area that, in fact, it's almost as if by trying to do this kind of everybody looking even at exclusivity, nobody's really sort of understanding that there's so many other little parts, like components, we would need to have in place first for it to kind of legitimately work. And it's like you say, if these people do believe that they're building an NFL and that this game will be there forever, all right, brilliant. But this is esports. We know there is no proof of concept to suggest that. There isn't one game that was around at the start that's around now. Sure, sequels, reimagining.
What's great though is those same people will always tell you, if you're like in our position, yeah, but you actually don't know what's going on in the industry. And they're the same people who buy into that shit, and then 3 years later they're bust, and you want to go, oh, what happened, mate? What happened to all that secret info? You were, oh, it was all bunk, was it? It's almost like someone was, when you were lying to everyone else, they were all lying to you. Joke's on you. Have another cocktail, wanker. I don't know why I'm not loved in this industry, Rich. I'm just an affable guy. I just want to get along. I just want the best for everyone, I like Deman. I like ESL. Let's all just get along and have a big party in Katowice. I might be late. You guys start without me.
The question to you, for me, would be, I mean, how can all of these moving parts work in harmony right now? Counterstrike is the growing game. It's the one everyone wants to be a part of. And everyone's trying to position themselves as the king of Counterstrike. Everyone's trying to position themselves as being the people that have access to the best teams, the best tournaments, put up in the best stadiums, broadcast on the best platforms, the best fans, obviously. Everyone wants to position themselves as being that, because if you do that, that's very lucrative indeed, and that will have multiple benefits that will even spill over into other titles that probably don't even exist yet competitively. So how I actually think this state of war that we're in is probably going to have to be the natural order of things. I don't see how you can fit all of these companies in.
I think ESL could have done it.
Landscape.
Here's the thing. I think ESL were the ones who could have done it. What they should have done is they should have started a coalition. They should have gone and picked out the right partners. At the moment, they only got ESEA and DreamHack because of this shady possible ownership of one hand owning all of them and operating them all, What they should have done is they should have picked out the other ones. So if it was me picking, I'd have picked out like Faceit are getting sort of big. I'd probably pick them as well. Maybe one other. So then I have ESL, DreamHack, ESEA, Faceit, and let's say I have one more. Let's say MLG to have a North American component. Okay, if I have them and I make my own coalition, and really it's not a coalition, it's just going to be like a Grand Prix. There's going to be a tournament circuit, and you know what, my model, the obvious one to me, is to do it like tennis, where none of the majors in tennis actually are considered the grand final. They're all their own separate entity that have their own unique charms, and no major is above any other major. Even if people say Wimbledon has the most prestige, some people prefer the US Open if they're American, Now, yes, there's an end of year event, but that's actually not even considered as big as the Grand Slams. That's its own little unique event at the end of the year, just for people with the most rank. But you don't have to there doesn't have to be a supremacy. Ultimately, if you set it up the right way and you give everyone sort of their due part, you give everyone their own piece of the land, as it were, then you can all make out like madmen and no one has to fuck anyone over and be the king of anything. Now, in a way, if you're ESL, you'd still would be the king. You'd still get to flex that bullshit muscle inside yourself that says, I know best, because you'd be leading this whole thing and you'd be the one holding the cards to a degree and saying, we're going to roughly do it like this. But you'd make it seem like, listen, okay, some of these smaller orgs are going to let you be a part of it. And I think they could have done it in like a halfway between. They could have done like a healthy way to construct some order to the chaos that is the current scene. Like, I don't disagree that there's something could be done there, but I think someone like ESL, I don't think that was ever even in their mind. I think they were always going for this notion of like, we're in position now where maybe we can go for broke and just own this whole scene. So fuck it. Fuck everyone else. Fuck all that they've accomplished and all they've built up. Let's just do it now and try and take over.
Would you say that so we can lay some of the blame at least on the doorstep of MTG though? You know,
here's the problem.
Perhaps they're being... Okay.
Yeah, I agree. That's the obvious person who you would think is sparking this because of the fact that it's a DreamHack thing involved as well, and MTG in some way on that. Because if it was just ESL, why would MTG owning DreamHack have anything to do with this move? Why wouldn't DreamHack again be in the other coalition and then MTG's super smart and they play both sides of it? So here's the problem though. I can't solely put it at MTG because remember, MTG wasn't involved, as far as I know, in the April meeting. Am I incorrect with that?
Sorry, who wasn't at the April meeting?
MTG was not involved with the April meeting.
Well, they denied it. They actually denied it. The original reports were that representatives from MTG were there, but MTG always denied that. They said that was wrong. So,
but based on my own very limited understanding of what the motivations of some of these people are, I get the sense the April meeting, yes, was ESL because they obviously have some. They obviously have some predilection towards this sort of league. But to me, it felt like the motivating force for the April one was Vulcan. Vulcan wanted to in some way be a promo.
Yes.
So to me, the problem here is that ESL is the ones who desperately want these evil demons to manifest in the esports world. And they're just the human conduit for these demons, whichever astral force may actually manifest to come through. And it's a different one at different points in time, but they're the channeling force at all points in time. Like that.
Yeah, but yeah, exactly. No, that makes sense. But I mean, again, if you were a business, that's probably what you would want to be, right? I mean, like,
I've never understood this whole thing about a business. Like, I've never understood this concept that because businesses are about making money, that you think of it as though, like, well, even though I'm a human, I have to do the ends of the business. I've never understood that. I mean, to me, life doesn't work that way. You don't have to do it where accumulating money is the ultimate goal. To me, it's like you have to accumulate enough money to keep whatever the original reason for having the business that supposedly sustains you going. I've never understood this idea that, like, well, just because other people would fuck everyone over and do it, okay, great, they're assholes too. So it doesn't let you off the hook, you know.
No, fair enough. But look, anyway, we've probably done this one to death. So are there any final points to make? I mean, I'm pretty confident that this is going to be announced officially soon. You will notice that nobody has come out and denied this one, which is quite telling. It's definitely a situation worth monitoring, but this is something that I think is going to change the face of Counterstrike as we know it. And 2016 is going to look very different to 2015. So just some final thoughts from you.
Well, here's one little point I'll make, which is something people probably won't think about in the paradigm of how they think of esports and media. But just think of this for a second. Why would Ralph Reichart, a head guy at ESL, one of the founders of those companies that became ESL, etc., Turtle Entertainment, etc., why would someone like that, who has Richard on Skype, put a public tweet out saying, like, lol at that quote? Why wouldn't he just privately message Richard on Skype and say, oh, that quote's probably not true, like, check your sources? So that means that he wasn't really messaging Richard. He had some sort of public agenda, even on a very low level with just industry people who follow him and Richard, that he wanted to make a statement publicly to fuck with Richard essentially there. I mean, that's an example of where people don't think of the medium through which they're getting information. So that in itself, I think that's why I've kind of made fun of it and not treated it with any respect, because the way it's done is not worthy of respect. That's not a private message to someone making a point of like, oh, maybe you're off point on that. That's trying to make a public statement that's sort of like you're a liar, basically. Mm-hmm. So that in itself is something sinister, I think, in its own way. I think in general, I can't see a I've never heard, put it this way, I've never heard a single good argument for an exclusivity league. Even the good arguments tend to be based in some sort of fantasy world where this utopia that eventually will come one day, guys, if you just give in to all our demands, will one day, much like some religious notion, eventually it'll benefit you. So all these negative things I'm going to make you go through now will one day all be worth it. Sorry, that doesn't work, mate. You've got to show me here and now why it will be beneficial day to day for this exclusivity to exist. I've never seen a good, compelling reason, yet we're supposed to have all these thinkers and all these genius ideologues, all these philosophers within these companies, yet not a single one can come up with a good reason that doesn't ultimately just come down to, see that number there? Hey, that's my bank account. It's bigger now. That's the ultimate. That's the only answer they can ever really get to. So I think it's bad, and I'm not in favor of it. And I'm going to fuck with people who do it. I'm not going to do more than that, but I'm going to fuck with you. So prepare thy anus.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I mean, it's a shame, isn't it? Really, and I've said this multiple times. There's not really a lot of watchdogs left, actually. These things are going to start going on under the radar in very soon. And people are people need to step their fucking game up. And when you start hearing shit like this, they need to start pumping it out there into the public domain, because otherwise we're going to end up with something done in secret, signed, sealed, delivered, and it's going to be packaged to the community, and we're going to have to swallow it, whether we like it or not. We're not going to be able to, be vocal about how we won't support something and maybe put the frighteners on the investors, the sponsors, the companies that are involved, the teams that are involved. It's going to be, hey, we did this. This is how we live now. Do you know what I mean? It's like you go to school one day, you come home, yay, we got divorced. Don't worry about it. You see your dad on weekends now. It's all right. Don't worry about it. You don't do it. You have to fucking graduate. I don't know. I've never been divorced, actually, Duncan. Maybe you do it like that. Do you?
I have no idea, mate. I've never made the mistake of getting married in the first place.
Yeah, true. And good on you.
See?
Good on you for not doing it.
Even in relationships, Richard, no compromise in the face of oblivion. Rorschach
Right,
to the
Rorschach.
end, motherfucker.
Yeah. So look, I was just thinking, because I wanted to talk about fucking Cluj. We've just been ranting and raving for ages. So are we gonna do another one of these shows before the event? Are we gonna do one while we're in Romania?
What's the date today?
Well, the thing is, because it would need to be on the Tuesday, which is like our media day, I think.
I mean, we could
fly out on the
technically do one as long
26th.
as the internet works. We could do one.
Yeah. Well, we could probably do it in the DreamHack studio. How sick would that be if they let us do that?
That probably depends how much shit I give them as soon as I get to the event about the fact that they're secretly not yet admitting that they're part of the Illuminati.
Yeah.
So it'll probably depend how that discussion goes, Rich.
So what I can do is I can get Sam to go through the VOD and basically be like, everywhere we go. And let's be honest, DreamHack fuck up as well. We can just change that. So let's be honest, DreamHack's the best.
I mean, who would have known someone whose original alias was Hellspawn Lord would be part of this shadowy channeling of evil forces into our realm?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly, mate. Who saw that coming?
I don't want to jump to conclusions.
Don't. So anyway, yeah, I think we can probably fit in the show. So fuck talking about Cluj. We'll talk about Cluj when we're in Cluj, I think. So let's do the news. Let's do the news. Big story. We'll talk about this first. Schneider parting ways with Dignitas just before the major. So Dignitas get into a major when you're like, okay, that's cool. And they got they got Schneider in there now. They got a good team. They had some moments in DreamHack London, and they've parted ways with him, and it's all a bit strange because he says that he decided to step down from the roster, and he had his own reasons, and he said the death of his grandmother was a factor, but wasn't the sole factor. So what has gone on here, and what does it mean for Dignitas? Obviously, we know he's now been replaced by Tensky, which we'll talk about that in a second. But what does all this mean, Duncan? Explain it to me.
Yeah, well, the big problem with this story that I saw was the order that things came out. So first of all, JW and some other people were making comments like, oh, Schneider's maybe leaving Dignitas, this is a bad thing because they're going to lose a good player, and they were obviously in a decent bit of form. And then Schneider himself releases a comment along the lines of like, oh, my grandmother's died, so that's why I'm not playing at the moment. He doesn't say he'd left at that point in time. So then it makes it seem like, oh, false alarm. He's just not playing for a little while. They're using a stand-in. He's just seeing to his personal issues, okay. That's why when I read this statement, I don't actually buy the end part about the grandmother. I don't know what the point in that even being an article is. The rest of the statement makes sense. Like, we had communication issues. It wasn't working out as well as it could have. They probably should use a Danish player. Maybe Schneider shouldn't play for them, should go somewhere else. Maybe he has a good offer from another team. In which scenario, what's the grandmother part got to do with it? What, has he quit CS because of that? No, he hasn't said he's retired. Is he not going to play for another team in the future? And hasn't said that either. So essentially, that just seems like a lame cop-out. Like, even if it's true, I mean, obviously, I have no reason to dispute it's true, but I don't really know what the relevance would be to this particular story. Now, in terms of Dignitas themselves, I don't think it's necessarily a problem that he's left. The problem was he never turned the world around by joining the team. He was decent, but he obviously had his own issues integrating into the team. They are a team that was supposed to be quite tactical, so having someone who can't speak Danish isn't ideal in any sense. I don't even mind Tensky as a replacement. I don't think Tensky can be as good as Schneider's ceiling would be. I think Tensky's a player on his own issue. For me, he's kind of in that Kirby category where it's like, yeah, you can go on and on about the talent they have, but they've got to really show me it on big lands before I'll give them that status. So it's actually,
I mean, look,
a bit of an underwhelming story.
Yeah, for me, okay, so first of all, it is fucking weird. It is weird. The whole thing's just weird, right? I mean, this is classic. Like, the Danish teams outside of TSM are just a clusterfuck nightmare of roster shuffles, personality imbalance, and fucking, dare I say, hormonal imbalance with some of these cunts. It's unreal, like the amount of arguing, bickering, infighting, backstabbing. So I don't know if it's anything to do with that. But then you've got, Schneider was like this star pickup. Obviously, they were going to have to evaluate what they were going to do with an AWP in the mix, and they gave it a pimp, and then sometimes they weren't using an AWP, and whatever, but they were making forward progress. Then you get to within spitting distance of a major. You then change the player that everyone is saying this guy can be the wild card and maybe take Dignitas to the next level. He's out. He's standing down for reasons unknown. And maybe this sounds really unsympathetic. If a parent dies, yeah, take some fucking time. Grandparent, I don't know. Maybe I'm really super fucking callous. But for me, unless you were raised by your grandparents or something, because old people die. Maybe this is just me and my family and my fucked up shit. I don't know. Maybe. But it's sad, but come on. Would Grammy would want you to go to a fucking major? You dig? So
I've never understood that in general, Rich. I've had a lot of fucked up things happen in my life, as bad or equally as bad as that. And you'll never know because I've gone to events, I've done my work still, and it hasn't changed anything. Because at the end of the day, this isn't life. I don't know. I realize Schneider's Swedish, but just for Americans out there, life isn't a movie. Movies are fiction. Even the story and the way they tell the story is not reflective of real life. In fact, it's not supposed to be. If you actually look at the history of movies, it's supposed to be art on the mythic level of how you tell stories about reality. It's not supposed to reflect reality. That's an absolute myth and maybe has something to do with postmodernism in the modern day. But the reason I say that is because when someone dies or something horrible happens, like you get raped or something happens, like you lose your business or you get deported, you still have to live your everyday life.
You went for that one first, by the way. I like the way you went for that one first. Why did you go for that one first? Because the other two...
It's a bad thing that can happen, mate.
Yeah, but
so here's the thing.
Why did you go for that one first? Just
because it's a bad thing that can happen.
Yeah.
The point is, whatever bad thing happens to you, at the end of the day, you still have to wake up tomorrow. The world doesn't give a fuck. It's another day. You go on with your everyday life. It doesn't get to be some key point in your whole life that ruins everything, unless you want it to be, unless you make it like a movie where you're so melodramatic, you build it up to be so incredibly huge. At the end of the day, when really horrible things happen to me, I found that it only crushes you when you sit by yourself in a room and you think about it as much as you can. If you just get on with your ordinary life, 90% of your day will go the same way it would have done anyway. So the point in this scenario is, in 2 years from now, if this really was the reason you stepped down and you missed this major, I think in 2 years from now, when it doesn't matter anymore, you will think, fuck, I wish I'd just played the major anyway, even if it had been a bit harder. So I kind of agree with you. I think it's just going a bit too far to make it, it's not the end of the world, mate.
No, and here's the thing. Obviously, I can't speak. Maybe he's got some super close relationship. What the fuck do I know, right? But for me, just in general, if we're just looking at things laid out, all the pieces, it doesn't make sense. There's something else at play. There has to be. This is a fucking major. Okay, let's real talk. They're in a fucking absolute nightmarish group anyway. You've got Envious. That's their first game, I think, as well on the scheduling, right? So they're going to get their well, I'm not even going to say the phrase.
I guess they were going to get raped then, Rich, anyway. So you had to learn to deal with that anyhow, Rich.
you
The
can't say
death of
that
his
in
loved
esports.
ones, getting raped, his business in some sense
You
is
can't
failing.
say that anymore. You
It's a
can't say
metaphor,
that
Rich.
anymore.
It's all a metaphor. Banter.
We're so close to the major, Duncan. Can we get there? Can we
My
get?
ticket's
Can
already
you?
booked, mate. They
Yeah,
don't want to
but
take that loss,
mate,
mate.
your ticket to Katowice was booked, and
I went there, mate. I know. I went
Yeah,
there.
exactly. And it was like, oh, Duncan, can you just step into this room? Yeah, about the things you said just before the major. Let's just not flirt with it. Let's just not flirt with it. As long as no one has odd shot any part of this show, we're safe. We can get there. We can do our thing, and then I say, look, after this major, the safety's off, mate. I'm gonna live the dream we've always fantasized about. I'm gonna say the things that no one ever dared. All the things we've always dreamed of saying. Right?
Here's the thing, Rich.
But
For me, if you think I'm edgy right now, here's a warning for the people of esports. After this major, I've got 2 ESL majors in the horizon before I do another major. So safety's off, motherfuckers, and I'm firing till I'm out of bullets. And if the zombies aren't all dead, I'm going to start using my bayonet on them.
good. But for now, let's just keep it, ESL, right? Let's keep it PG-13. So anyway, you made me lose my fucking train of thought now with your constant talking about sexual assault.
It was about Dignitas. It was about Schneider.
Yeah. So they're going to get wrecked in that group, right? About first game anyway. Then you've got Na'Vi. Okay, bit of a weird game maybe. Like Na'Vi, not an amazing form, but Na'Vi should beat Dignitas all fucking day long. Now I think the position they're in, changing a player just before the major, like I don't see how they could fucking. Well, I'm saying they would play Na'Vi. I'm assuming, obviously. That they would beat CLG and would have to play Na'Vi if Envious beat Na'Vi. But I don't see how they can beat any team in that group, no matter how it goes, no matter who beats who. I think now Dignitas have put themselves in a ridiculous position of just going straight out, 2 games, get fucked, go home, and it was always going to be tough. So I have no idea why they were just something some agreement couldn't have been reached. Like please Schneider. Don't do this to us. Like why couldn't it have just gone the way it should have gone? Like and this
Plus, if life was a movie, this is where you would play, and then you do really well, and you'd be like, "I'd like to attribute this event to the memory of a special person in my life who always encouraged me." That's how the movie ends, right? Obviously, he brought the magic. Yeah. The magic man, as I call him.
But yeah, so like here's the thing. I just want to know what the other reasons are. I want to know what the other reasons are.
Well, no, Richard. What would happen is, as you were saying, I'd like to make this event my Dignitas reaching the semi-finals. No one expected we could do it, but I believed in myself because someone always believed in me, and I'd just like to tribute this event to. And as you were saying that, Carmack would do a fireman's lift of you up, and then Red Eye would pop in and hug you from behind, and then that would just be the end of the event. They start playing the music and then pan camera off.
I have fantasies about that happening, mate. It's
and you'd just be in a little narcissism sandwich.
Don't stop being edgy. Stop being fucking edgy. You're gonna make me say something. I'm the peacekeeper. I'm the sheriff of this town. You gotta stop, you fucking outlaw. So anyway, I want to know what the other fucking reason is, because all the other reasons, all the other circumstances, because I think if you find out what they are, you get to one of the underlying problems within Dignitas, and maybe you can fix it, and maybe you can make them a good team. Right? That's why I want to know. And instead, I think it's going to be one of those things. It's going to get swept under the carpet. I think they're going to have a terrible time at this major. Again, I'd like them to prove me wrong. I like the guys. Loads of friends in the Danish scene say it all the time. But I don't really see how this is going to help them achieve what was already a potentially impossible task. So, look, I think we're at our limit now, Duncan. I think we need to kill the show just for your own safety, for all our safety. So we won't talk about the rest of the news. We'll try and do a Cluj show just before Cluj. I'm sure, aren't you going to do one of them videos, Duncan? It's like Duncan's thoughts on every permutation of the groups. Are you going to do that?
I'll probably do some simple content like that, yeah.
Yeah, I thought you might. Thought you might. So, Scoots has even said in the chat there. He says that if this keeps up, I'm 10 more minutes away from hosting the desk next week. So keep it up, boys. Nah, we need to get out of here. Scoots is saying, if we're getting too edgy for Scoots with his fuck you money, we got problems. So anyway, final thoughts before we wrap up, and of course get ready to fly out to Romania. Please call me and remind me to get my plane. I wouldn't want to miss it.
I mean, I wouldn't let all this exclusivity shit get you down too much, because as you can see by the story initially looks like it's about just the coalition, but it's in response to what's going on in the exclusivity. So the thing is, as I've mentioned every time we've heard about television leagues or exclusivity, it hasn't played out yet. There's a reason why you're hearing about this in rumors and not yet actually as like someone announcing something. That's because there's a lot of pieces in play still, and there's no end game yet being set. So I'm not worrying about it at the moment. I'm just going to enjoy this major. I'm going to see what happens at the beginning of next year. And call me naive, Richard, but a part of me still thinks that at least people won't be stupid enough to realize that by signing up to Exclusivity League, they'll in any way allow themselves to continue on for success. Because to me, they'll all, in the short term at least, limit their own prospects. And so I hope they'll at least act in their own self-interest to remain part of the open circuit. So I'm not that worried at the moment. I'm just looking forward to DreamHack Cluj poker.
Brilliant. I'm glad to hear it, Duncan. So anyway, thanks for all your thoughts. There's certainly going to be lots more to talk about when we do our next show. And of course, the show after that, because we'll, I think we're going to, I'm going to be very smug. I think NBS are going to win. So I want to say that in every show. Just keep it in the minds of the people that watch. Richard was right, because I don't get any credit whatsoever. So I guess we'll wrap up there. Sam, well done for producing the show. Are you there with it? Are you still with us, mate?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, brilliant. Great. He's there. He's there. So just wanted to check. So thanks to everyone for watching. And of course, if you enjoyed this show, and I know lots of you do, the best way to say thank you is to the people that make it possible, which is, of course, Alphadraft.com. They do fantasy, esports, play for cash. And you can go on the website, create an account, and they'll be running an event sort of in conjunction with the major, I believe. So you'll be able to pick out all your best players as well as doing your pick'ems on Steam and see how you fare. And there will be fiscal rewards for the prudent and smart. My advice is to listen to Duncan, because we've talked about this on the show, haven't you? Apparently you've never really won big on fantasy betting, have you?
That's because actually fantasy betting can be counterintuitive. Like, there can be players who have qualities that are very good in a game, but if they're intangibles in any sense, then you don't win. You're literally going off the stats. So it's fun in a way that if you can kind of tune into the frequency of how the stats are going to go, people can definitely win. But I have to admit, on the CSGO ones, I haven't put that much effort into learning how you're supposed to actually bet the CSGO one. On the League of Legends one, I have an idea of the tricks that you do. On CSGO, I literally just pick my favorite players for the day, and I don't care if I lose. I just do it for fun.
There you go. Well, when you're making all the 6 Skrilla that we have for Alphadraft, obviously, you don't need to worry about it. So anyway, look, we'll kill the show there, but do show some love to Alphadraft. Again, they haven't interfered with the show at any point. Literally, we get to turn up and do what we want, and they haven't said, yeah, Duncan, you keep referencing World War II. Could you stop that? Which I'm pretty sure should have happened by now. Even I think that should have happened by now. But they don't. They trust us to let us make the show what we want it to be. So anyway, we're going to close up there. Thanks a lot for watching. Until we see you next week, which will probably be Tuesday, which is our media day, and obviously Romanian internet withstanding. May all your drafts be alpha. Have a good night.